Good evening. The scene tonight takes place in the studio apartment haven of Stefan Braunfiedler. He's woken this evening and the time that he usually does. Though he did not have an exceedingly troubled sleep during the daytime. He awakes with some troubling thoughts. He gets dressed as usual in preparation for his later work shift. After that, he steps over to his small but distinguished bookshelf and gathers a few books that he'll need for the project that he's undertaking. He's laid out the small saw, a couple rolls of varying grit sandpaper, a can of wood water sealant for finishing, of course. That's off to the side. The wood itself, the wire, eyelets, screws. He's pulled out screwdrivers, pliers, and a few of his more well-worn chisels, but they're still good enough to be functional for this task, as well as a knife more suitable for carving wood. Though this is not his typical medium. He doesn't generally work in wood. He's not He's not a carpenter type by any stretch of the imagination, but for this task, a task that will utilize his knowledge of science, his knowledge of medicine, as well as his sculpting talents. He takes a seat at his workbench, opens a couple books off to the side. One is on basic body, or one details advanced anatomy and musculature. That way he can get the motions of this prosthetic right arm correct. He told Damian that he may, with some practice, only, it'll only maybe give him partial mobility in a couple predominant fingers, but maybe, just maybe, he'll be able to make something even better. Make something that anyone would be, proud to use, to be able to regain something that was lost. As he begins setting to the work, getting to the preparations before he actually starts to basically shape a few pieces. Pieces are big enough around to where he can carve a hand, or shape a hand, fingers, thumb, the basic structure of the whole. He's got appropriate parts for making rudimentary joints for the wrist, elbow. Some thoughts occur to him, thoughts that don't usually invade his waking mind, don't usually come to the forefront unless his mind is racing. But these thoughts do invade. Typically, the predominant nightmare that Stefan suffers from involves the night, which he, in a manic rush of inspiration, the woman who had been assaulted that night, laying in that alleyway, dying. By the time he actually got over to her, she was dead. The eyes that he took, the eyes he carefully preserved, the eyes he carefully crafted with all of his knowledge, all of his workings, with all the power of his mind and creativity, the eyes that he placed into the sockets of the statue that he carved, this magnificent work in white marble. Eyes at the end of an alleyway, a dark alleyway. A face, but he cannot make out who the face belongs to. He's tried to discern whose face it is, and he's never been able to. The dark wings running up and down the alleyway, the ominous whispers, the sounds, even the screams, the visions of the last time that he saw Cherie Blanc alive, the talk that they had in this very apartment, the two chairs that he keeps in the forward section just inside of his door, the sitting area, the comfort zone of this whole apartment, as most of it is about function. And that is more about form. The sadness that he felt when he found out Cherie was dead. Regrets, the haunting visions, other visions he can't even explain. He doesn't know what they are. He doesn't know what they signify. But these new visions of a man mocking him, a man in a very well dressed in a suit, sitting across the boardroom table, laughing and mocking him. The echoes of a city taunting and harassing him. Can't quite make out what's being said, but the emotions that override his subconscious and tonight his consciousness ever so slightly make him feel as though his pursuits are worthless, like everything he's trying to do, everything he will do in the future is for nothing. He sits back. He kind of sits back as much as he can on the work stool without falling off, of course. And he sits. Just barely managing to keep himself from actually shedding a tear or tears, just barely able to contain the overriding emotion to just give up. Kind of sits back and he thinks a little bit. He remembers how difficult the Ventru, Zachary Voltaire, was. The distrust from so many people, the misunderstanding of those who have misunderstood him greatly. Does not mean anyone harm. This thought he tries to project into his mind, this thought, like a mantra, he just thinks it over and over and over and over again. Eventually, he kind of rubs his eyes a little bit and just kind of thinks to himself, I have work to do. I have work to do. He begins by trying to recall, and I'll make just a intelligence roll, difficulty 7, to try to remember. And he sits back and he tries to recall, and as though he's like looking in a mirror, what will be the approximate shape of Damian's arm. And indeed, the vision in his mind is quite clear, actually. He begins to shape the hand in that of a right hand. He begins by taking the knife that he has and starting to shape the fingers and the hand a little bit, carving a bit at a time, with the other two pieces of wood that he's selected for this task, set off to the side so that it won't hinder his work, much like the tools that he has also set within reach, but far enough to where they do not get in the way. He spends a good 30 to 45 minutes focusing on shaping fingers and hands, at least up to where the hand will connect via the wrist joint to the forearm. And I'll have him make his roll. We'll keep it at difficulty 7. 3 successes so far. After about 45 minutes, the hand is nowhere near complete, but it's starting to take shape nicely. With the clear image that Stefan has in his head, the measurements he takes into account from last night, he takes a look at that notepad that he has sitting off to the side next to one of the 3 books that he will be using as reference for this whole project, including, but he knows that he's going to have to go to the library to find a book on basic mechanics. Try to find something that relates to this kind of pursuit. But it starts to take shape. By the time, or Stefan stays hard at work until about 30 minutes before he needs to be at work for his shift this evening. I'll make another couple rolls to represent this. 3, 4, 5. And I'm making Wits crafts rolls. So let's see. Yeah. So take 2 successes off the extended roll. So yeah, he kind of loses some progress given the distraction that the distraction of the thoughts in the back of his mind, those that he tried to push back to allow him to start this project. He, out of nowhere, he kind of tosses the tools on the bench, jumps off of the stool, knocking it aside, tumbling to the floor, laying there. And he just stands in one place. He's obviously steaming. He's fuming as the thought of all those who have distrusted him, all of those who refuse to even listen to what he has to say, all of those who discount his words because they misunderstand. Stefan, his mind begins racing inexplicably. His emotions, if his heart beat like a mortal, if he had to breathe like a mortal, he would probably be hyperventilating. Fuck! They do not know what's hate. None of them. They are all a bunch of ingrates. Most of the brew. The fucking Ventru. Lacey, Damian. Howard. Zachary Voltaire. Ulrich Ivanov. All a bunch of over self-absorbed. Stefan tries to calm down. He tries to step back, but to no avail. He gets up. He already has his keys, his wallet, his phone on him. He doesn't bother to grab the sport coat that he generally wears, but tonight he realizes, even in his manic state, that he's dressed in a casual attire, jeans, t-shirt. The only thing that is business casual are the loafers that he wears, just because they were easiest to slip onto his feet after sliding the socks over the 5 toes and the structure of that which he walks on. Rushes out with only one thought in his mind. there in the projects. He rushes out. Oh, I'm actually going to roll to see if he actually does, even in his manic state, remember to lock his door. He. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. Yes, with 3 dice, not 4. Yeah, he manages to actually, like, the last thing he does is he agitatedly takes his keys, puts it into the lock, and locks his door as usual, slipping his keys back into his pocket very angrily. Then he just yells out, "Why do they all have to be a bunch of fucks?" He storms down the stairs and heads north in the projects with only one thought in his mind: the top of the top of the most familiar building, the building that he's used as a meeting place with Thomas. He brushes off into a huff, but even in his agitated state, he has purpose. He wants to utterly destroy something. He utterly wants to make the suffering that his mind, that his emotional state is going through at this moment. Fuck! I do not understand why they all have to do this to me! I cannot lose it. I cannot. No. Oleg did this. Lacey did this. Damian did this. Zachary Volater did this. Whatever happens tonight is on their hands, not mine. And in the rush, not even thinking where the project that he started this evening was left off, he storms off into the night and disappears into the shadows just out of an instinct of not wanting to be bothered by any of the ignorance, but in his state, he just storms off. He doesn't care who the fuck sees him tonight. He doesn't care who he runs into. He doesn't care whose life is changed irrevocably. Irrevocably. It takes some time. But after about 30 minutes, he, walking at a very fevered pace, just walking down the street, he eventually enters the projects. It doesn't even occur to him to, take the normal routes that he would normally take to try to avoid trouble. No, he just walks in. He doesn't care, and he ends up heading down what appears to his agitated mind a busy area. He can start to hear shouting, the occasional gunshots off in the distance, yelling, screaming, arguing. To his mind currently, this is good. This is exactly the kind of echo that he needs to hear to try to allow him to. He doesn't even care if he understands. He just wants to bring some kind of suffering down on somebody because he cannot take it anymore. Some time passes after he enters the projects, and He's approached by two men. They appear to be wearing like colors. They come up to him. Hey man, what do you think you're doing in this neighborhood? I don't recognize you around here. Stefan stops and just glares at the man who spoke to him. He looks up with a feverish look in Stefan's eyes. He just glares at the man with all of the hatred, with all of the rage that's been building up, all of the exasperated emotion that's currently running through his mind, making his heart beat, making the VTMYTE in him actually function as a blush of health in his state. Completely subconsciously this happens. He just gives this man a death stare. You do not want to mess with me tonight. There is only one thing that you should do right now if you know what is good for you, and run! The words come out, not subtly, not with no kind of tact, with no kind of, the usual use of this particular gift that Stefan is graced with. And in fact, his own brand of family is gifted with. But I'll make that roll. And as soon as Stefan says that, a wash of fear, the man's face flushes, and he just books it. The other man looking at him. What the fuck's going on here? He reaches about his waistband and pulls a small handgun from his waistband, and but before, well, let me see. Oh yeah, before he can actually draw, Stefan sets upon him. Like not even really knowing what he's doing. He doesn't actually seem to do any harm, but he tackles the man and he begins just beating his fist about him, just going absolutely crazy. And in an absolute, in the rush of the moment, in the loss of control, the control that Stefan prides himself on, he just bites into the man's neck and just begins to drink. He doesn't even give a shit what happens. He just drains this punk on the street, this obvious criminal element, this utter piece of shit that Stefan has just tackled to the ground. The man eventually goes limp as Stefan's thirst is completely sated. He rushes off into the distance. Consciously, he doesn't know where he's going, but Stefan's subconscious knows exactly where to take his feet. The top of the building that he spent so much time, the building that one of the few buildings abandoned that Thomas introduced him to. to try and find whatever he can in the solace of that, in that windowed rooftop, though broken, the solace of that chair, the view, the partial isolation of the rooftop, as Stefan rushes off into the night toward this one subconscious goal. The scene feverishly comes to an end.